Welcome into another edition of the Varsity Podcast. Justin Barney, Sponge Franklin. We're going to have a quick Varsity Podcast today. Got a lot of ground to cover, Sponge. Let's talk about last week's games as we enter week 4. As we always do, we look back before we look ahead. Let's talk about 4 from last week. To me, I think I'm going to start off Mandarin again. Getting it done. Mandarin Riverside was our game of the week. Mandarin goes out and drops a 50, half 100 on those Riverside Generals. Riverside has had a good start. I mean, they had been cranking it up on defense and 50-20 in that game. So pretty good start for Mandarin against some very good defense.
Yeah, we talked about Riverside, maybe not playing up to the snuff of competition. The first 2 wins they had to not allow a point on defense. We knew Mandarin's offense had been clicking in the first 2 weeks, and it just continued on the show. And to score 50, Tremel Jones, Jamie French killed them boys. Riverside, took one on the chin, but that's one of those games where you're playing a little bit of that upper echelon competition, and you finally see that maybe you aren't as good as what we thought.
Yeah, when you step that up in competition, that's the questions I get a lot of times when we do Super 10 rankings is, why don't you have such and such team? Why don't you have such and such team? Well, the competition matters. And if you look at a Bolles team right now who is 0-3,
right,
you've played 3 teams who are just murdering their opponents. So, yeah, when you look at a team like a Bolles, or for instance, I would have Bolles higher than Atlantic Coast or Riverside just because you're playing the dogs and the horses in those games. So competition matters when you're looking at rankings and you're looking at top teams. So Mandarin, again, has justified all the hype. They've looked very good. And I think Mandarin is going to make a deep run in the playoffs. Another team last week, Bolles and Coffee. I thought Bolles would break the streak against Coffee, and it did not happen. Bolles loses 17-9. They're 0-3. Their first 0-3 start since 1967.
I know. It's wild. We thought they could get off the schneid and get a win in the Border Classic against a good Georgia team. We talked about them in the first 2 games, how good they were offensively, and then it just went nowhere. 7 points. Obviously Coffee County's probably got a good D. Those South Georgia teams always, the defense is usually what they hang their hat on. So, 0-3, and then you get Trinity this week, and it's just like maybe the schedule will lighten up for, you to get going and get some positivity going on. And it's just tough to get, you start like this, and you're just like, man, can we just get something right? Can we get something going? Can we get a win? And eventually it'll come for them, and, they just got to put it all together. Offensively, they got to go back to the drawing board because they had been playing good offensively, and their defense is what, was struggling. So
if you remember last year, they went up to the Border Classic and had a dogfight against Brunswick. They lost the game, lost quarterback DJ Moore in that process, didn't have a good offensive game there either. So again, Bolles' schedule, and to me, I don't think Bolles, it's panic time yet.
No, definitely.
You're 0-3. You played 3 teams that are combined unbeaten this season.
All those teams are going to be, like we just said, a deep playoff run. Mandarin, a deep playoff run. We think St. Augustine's really good, and then Cobb County's good. So, and then, like you said too, if Atlantic Coast or Riverside or some of these other teams would have the same schedule, they'd be 0-3 as well.
Yeah, I agree. So I think Bolles will be fine. You look at Bolles' district, and that's where the games lighten up.
Right.
And that's what you got to do. You got to win your district, and you're in the playoffs, and you're going to be fine. Bolles last year had a 3-game losing streak and reached the state semifinals. Dave Plantation, American Heritage, all it could handle. So, again, I'm not sounding the alarm bell on Bolles right now. I think it's still too early, and you're playing good competition. It lightens up after week 5. You got Trinity this week and Oakleaf next week. And I think Bolles will be safe. Even if they finish 5-5 in the regular season, I think they're going to probably win that district and have a good playoff run again. So those are 2 from last week. What are your 2 from last week, Sponge?
We talked about Ed White and Inglewood. Ed White, played a tough game in that week 1 against Trinity, banged a little bit, but eventually lost the game. Then they had 2 nice back-to-back weeks, the unveiling of the new Inglewood field, which looked awesome. And that was another team. Inglewood, started off 2-0, was feeling pretty good. And then you get to play a little bit of team that has a little bit better competition, a little bit more depth, a little bit more playmakers, and it's tough on you.
Yeah.
You get exposed a little bit to say, hey, we got to get back to the drawing board and get this thing right. And so I think Ed White is a very solid young team in the area, and they actually have been playing some pretty good ball. And I want to see where this team can go as the season goes on with them as well.
Yeah, I like Inglewood, what they've done under Kevin Johnson. They started 2-0 last year, had that Ed White game. And that's where things kind of that steep mountain climb for Inglewood really started to take hold and stuff. I think Inglewood will be fine. I think they're on an ascension under Kevin Johnson. You've got to start playing those tougher teams and getting yourself ready. Again, you're playing the teams, the Paxtons and the Stantons and the Wolfsons and those guys. No offense to those guys, but they're not going to test you like a team like an Ed White is. So, again, good start for Inglewood, a good start for Atlantic Coast. You just got to play those heavyweights and see what you're made of. Your fourth game from last
The other game was the big one that the other Border Classic game. St. Augustine, taking on Brunswick, who Brunswick had like a 23-game home win streak or 23 games.
Regular season win streak. Yeah, not lost in a long time.
And we've talked about it, and that St. Augustine offense is good, man. I was watching some of the highlights, some of the clips, and Carl Jenkins, man, is like that. That dude is legit. He's as good as they come. We talk about Jamie French and, some of these receivers in the area. Carl Jenkins is.
He is. Like, I love that there's 3 receivers on St. Augustine, and they are all lights out. And it helps when you got Lachlan Hewlett delivering you the ball. But
definitely.
I've said it since the beginning of the season. I talked to Brian Brack at Media Day, and I said, does this team remind you of a team from your 03, 04, 05 teams? And he said, yeah, it does. I've had that thought. I've had that conversation. And you go back in St. Augustine's history, that 03 team was starting a bunch of freshmen and sophomores. By the time they were seniors, they were 15-0 and won a state championship. They made that leap in their junior seasons, which is now for Lachlan and some of those guys. Devontae Lyons running back to senior.
Yeah.
But they made that leap in the junior season. They finished undefeated in the regular season, lost to Bolles in the state semifinals. And then, oh, by the way, your 05 season, you go 15-0, win a state championship. I see the parallels there. I've noticed it. Man, Carl Jenkins is solid. Got Miles at receiver, Devontae at running back. I mean, they have got some ballers.
They do it in different ways. It's not like he caught a 0, right now, get me the ball and housed it 80 yards. Then they threw a 9 ball to him for 80 yards, and it was just like, this guy's good.
Yeah.
Then, he's hitting intermediate routes. Hewlett's been good at quarterback. And then, oh, by the way, we've got a 100-plus yard game for Lions and a touchdown every week. So it's like they can be multifaceted on offense. Defense will eventually catch up and be good as well. I mean, obviously, it was a bit of a shootout against Brunswick, a good Brunswick team.
Yep.
And so they won 2 kind of shootout games, beating Bolles earlier in the year. But St. Augustine right now collectively is really good.
Yeah, they're good. And I've been on the St. Augustine drum this year and said this team, if they don't play for a state championship this year, I will be a little surprised. I think they get down there. I think they get to the Final Four. They've got that talent. And just showing, to me, seeing them against Bolles last year and then this year shows how far they've come.
Yeah.
And I think St. Augustine is the truth. I think in that suburban division, I think they are going to be a difficult team to get out. And Brian Braddock's has got those guys, has developed them. You got guys from that 05 team on staff. Brandon James is down there, one of my favorite guys. I love watching Brandon at high school. He's an unbelievable player. And I think this collection of St. Augustine guys is going to follow that arc of that 03, 04, 05 team, and they're going to get there. So before we go into our this week's games, are going to crank out our Super 10. So not a lot of changes in the back end of mine. Number 10, I've got Oakleaf. They haven't played in a couple weeks. They've missed a game due to against Baker County due to Hurricane Idalia, and then had a natural bye week. So Oakleaf, I've got them at 10. They got Fleming Island this week. It's going to be a big one. At number 9 for me. Who do I have at number 9? Ponte Vedra at number 9, another one that did not play last week. They're 1-1. They have Middleburg this week. Number 8, I've got UC. They beat Charlton County last week, 43-10. Just the second time in program history they beat Charlton. Been in back-to-back years. Number 7, Bishop Kenny's a little struggle with DeCoy Creek last week, 23-20. Knew that was going to be a tight game for the Crusaders, but they're still 2-0. They're looking good. Number 6, Rains, 26-7 over Sandalwood last week. Rains is Rains. They had a tough one against Daytona Beach Mainland this week. And number 5, had a lot of shakeups. In my number 5, I've got Bradford at number 5. Big game. They gave up a touchdown to Middlebury, their first true touchdown on defense they allowed this season. But again, when that's a storyline for Bradford, that's how you know you're a pretty darn good team.
Definitely.
Number 4, I've got Trinity Christian. They dropped a spot for me. They beat NFEI 43-0. Really no fault of Trinity's own, just what happened ahead of them in the rankings. So I've got Trinity at 4. Bartram Trail, they go from 1 to 3. They lost to Daytona Beach Mainland 28-24 last week. A home loss, disappointing. But again, Mainland played for a state championship last year. So Bartram at 3. I got St. Aug going from 5 to 2 for me. They were the big movers, and you beat a Brunswick team at home. Brunswick had not lost there in 23 regular season games. That's an unbelievable streak. Garrett Grady and does a great job with Brunswick. And number 1, I've got moving up from 2 to 1. The ponies of Mandarin Mustangs, they're number one for me. They started the season at 6, and they have justified every week out that they are that good. So Mandarin, my new number one team. Third different influence.
Mine is pretty much the same as yours. Top 5 is a little shuffle there. I've got Mandarin 1, St. Aug 2, Trinity, Bartram, Bradford. Then I've got Rains, UC, BK, Ponte Vedra, and I got Fleming Island at 10.
Okay.
I think Fleming Island beats Oakley.
So we got a little bit of change, but not much between Sponge and I. So we got all the same top 10 teams. And again, I think when you start getting those teams like Atlantic Coast and those guys, you still have to make that next step. Now, if Atlantic Coast beats Manor this week, to me, that's a big thing. So this week we've got some good games. First district week for us.
Yeah.
Let's jump into games this week pretty quickly.
Yeah, like I say, I'll lead it off with that Atlantic Coast Mandarin game just because Atlantic Coast has a little bit of buzz going on at 3-0. They're winning some tight games. They're winning some close games. You get to play an opponent like a Mandarin who's number one, who's everybody's talking about. So you get to go get a piece of them. You get to go take a shot.
Yeah,
and that's what you love to compete. That's what you want. So I still think Mandarin obviously is our number one team for a reason. I think Mandarin handles business, and I think they get it done. And Atlantic Coast kind of comes back to reality a little bit. Had a nice start. So now, what do you learn from a win or a loss? What do you learn from playing a team like Mandarin? And how do you go from there? So, like I say, it's good matchup, good game. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah,
the President's Cup or Principal's Cup.
Yeah, it's a great start for Atlantic Coast. Step Durham and that team.
Yeah.
Speed at QB. Gabby Ward kicking points and field goal. I mean, Atlantic Coast has been a great storyline. They're 3-0. I mean, they entered the season on a 14-game losing streak. Now, 11 of those were on the field. 3 of those were actual forfeit games. So technically, an 11-game on the field losing streak for Atlantic Coast. A Step Durham, Atlantic Coast product, graduated from there. He was a super 11 guy for me at Times Union. He comes in there and, man, he has flipped things around quick. Got those guys and girls believing that they can get things done. And through 3 weeks of the season, you're a month into the season this week, and you're undefeated. If you're Atlantic Coast.
You got to feel good about something.
So. That is awesome. So great start for Atlantic Coast. I think Mandarin's got the upper hand this week. Another one, Fleming Island and Oakleaf battle of Clay County district game for these guys.
I like it.
I think that's going to be a good one. 2 new head coaches, Chad Parker, Christopher Foy. This is going to be a battle for years to come.
What I like about the reason why I put Fleming in at 10 and Oakleaf is no knock on Oakleaf, just hasn't played, with all the hurricanes and buys and all that stuff. I like what Fleming has at quarterback and skill.
Yep.
And I think that, is where, Oakleaf's still bringing in, some new guys, obviously new coaching staff and all that. But Oakleaf is definitely very good. But I just like what Parker's got over there.
Yep.
Parker's got going on. I love Sebastian. I love some of their skill guys. They're nice.
Yeah, I like Fleming. I like Fleming, and it'd be interesting to see what they do in their first real big game.
Yeah.
They got Orange Park and NFEI, not really the creme de la creme in terms of the big time talent there. So that'll be a challenging game for both of them. Again, Oakleaf hadn't played in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It'd be the first game in 3 weeks. So
there's gonna be a little rust there.
Yep. So that is going to be a good one. The big one on Friday night, I think we talked about it. First, we'll get to the next big one. Rains against Daytona Beach Mainland. Rains has been good.
Yeah,
Mainland is.
I'm hearing my Rains friends chirping a little bit because we're not giving them as much love possibly as we can. Having them hanging out at like number 6 is Rains, all that. Definitely, like Rains is Rains, but this is one of those statement games where you get to go out and play a Daytona Beach Mainland who is a perennial power, in North Central Florida, and a team that just beat Bartram, who was like one of our top teams in the area in a tight game. So guess what? Go prove it.
Yeah.
You get to go compete against a team who's got a little bit of pub, and now you get to go do it on the field. And like I think it's a heck of a matchup, and I'm looking forward to see what Rains is going to do. Yeah,
I like it. And Travis Rowland's a great coach down there at Mainland. And you go into Bartram, you beat the Bears at home on a night they honor Daryl Sutherland. I mean, it's a great win for Mainland to come up and beat Bartram like they did. So I like that. And again, if you're Rains, you've played UC in week 1 and dominated them. You thumped Sandalwood in week 2, a game where they knocked me over on the sideline. Rains, come on, man, what are you guys doing? First time they wiped out on the sideline. So yeah, anyway, that
you were too zoomed in.
I too zoomed in, man. I didn't get back quick enough. So Rains, I think that's going to be a great challenge for them. Man, Mark Miller toting the rock. Tyron Randolph throwing it at quarterback. I mean, great defensive and offensive line. So this is a good Rains team. And really, I don't think any fault of their own why they've not kind of cracked that top 5. But man, the team in front of them are just deep, loaded, and
they haven't had that big statement game because they haven't played. Like they get a chance to when you beat Sandalwood and UC was a nice win for sure. But like you just said, the teams in front have some impressive wins, so they've got a little bit more of a resume built up so far. So like this is one of those resume building games where you can say, all right, you guys showed me something.
Yep, I agree. I think if Reigns can beat a Mainland on the road at Mainland, that's a huge signature win for Donovan Maslin and company. So the last game this week, Trinity Christian and Bolles, anytime these guys get together, no matter what the records are, it's worth being a spotlighted feature game. So Trinity going to Bolles. Now, since this rivalry resumed, and you've been at all those games, Sponge, Trinity has got a 4-3 edge on the field. They actually had to forfeit one game due to an eligible player. So the 3-4 technically in the record book. But 4-3 on the field, forfeits to me, or you take that out, you won on the field.
Yeah.
So you're 4-3 on the field against Bolles. You've had blowout games. Bolles wrecked Trinity a couple times in this series, and three of those, two of those.
That's the last time we went over there.
Yeah, the running clock game. But a different type of Bolles this year in terms of the depth and stuff. You don't have the Jack Pyburns and the Cade Frews and those guys anymore who are part of those big wins. So to me, it's a challenge game for Bolles, and I think Bolles is certainly capable of winning this game.
Yeah,
and again, it's how do you answer defensively against some of those guys, and that's take away the coffee game, but against the two local teams we've seen against St. Augustine and against Mandarin, you've had trouble stopping them.
The prime example of those two games, Mandarin and St. Augustine, what do they do well? They throw the ball well.
Yep.
Trinity, obviously with Colin, they pose that threat of, we've got downfield receivers, good skill guys. They can throw the football. So like if you struggle on the back end, which they have done, I didn't do a deep dive into Coffee County's offense and their scheme and what they even do. But obviously they scored 14 was there 17-7 was that final. And so basically Trinity poses that threat of a passing game. And that's where you've been struggling. So if you didn't get that cleaned up, maybe you got it cleaned up, maybe you still got to get some cleaned up. That's going to be a big key in the game if they can get some pass. Like, because still my biggest problem right now with Trinity is still the offensive line protecting. Colin's been like, even NEFI was getting after us a little bit last week in that game. It was just like, come on. So offensive line needs to do a better job, and then give Colin some time. And when he has time, he's able to hit the guys that are open.
Yep.
And so that's the big deal. So hopefully, we'll get a good matchup and maybe Bolles will tighten that up. But then on the flip side, Bolles needs to clean up their offense from last week of only scoring 7 points after they had been pretty good the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, so it's, to me, clash of styles in that game. But Bolles can put pressure on Colin Hurley, which the last time they played at Bolles, they absolutely ate his lunch.
They were all over.
In terms of swamping that offensive line. So that starts there. If you can make the quarterback uncomfortable, I don't care what quarterback it is, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, Colin Hurley, anybody at quarterback, that changes the complexion of the game. You look back the last time Bolles hosted Trinity, and everything about you in that game, all you need to know was Colin was running for his life that game. So if you can make the quarterback uncomfortable, make him get out of his rhythm. You saw what Colin did last week when he had time and rhythm and flow. 5 touchdowns in that game.
Go back to the previous week, American Heritage Plantation, all over him. We struggled offensively, struggled passing the ball down the field, getting guys open. He was running around and just couldn't get feet set. You can't get, can't get your shoulder square to throw good balls downfield. So all that. So protection is a big key this week, obviously, to try to, get the passing game going. So then what does that do? That opens up your run. So, then Darnell can find some lanes. And then same thing for DJ and those guys on offense. Trinity's got to get after DJ to make him uncomfortable so that he doesn't find Naeem and those guys downfield. So, it's just a matter of executing and doing what you do best, and that's why you play the game.
That's right. So before we wrap things up, I'm going to try a little new segment this week. We're going to fly through it. Kind of a true or false kind of segments. We'll hit 4 of these pretty rapid fire. Okay, well, kind of a tired or wired, true, false. We will have a team play for a state championship this year. True or false?
True.
Okay.
Now, I feel like we've got our top 5 teams in the area. I think one of those teams, even Reigns, I think all of those guys have a great shot at making a run and getting there. Now, can we have a winner? I don't know if that's your question 2, 3, or 4. That might be a different story, but I think we're definitely going to get a team in the game.
Okay, so that's
What do you got?
I'm going to say true. I'm going to say true will have a team make a state championship game. Last year was only the first time this millennium, the second time this millennium that we had not have a team play for a state championship. So I think we will have a team.
All right.
One team at least play for a state championship this year. I don't know who it is, but my next question, our second of the four, we will have a team win a state championship. True or false?
I'm gonna say true.
Okay.
I feel like one of like you said it before. If St. Augustine keeps their train rolling, Bradford, they got to play Cocoa.
Yeah, gotta play Cocoa again. So okay, you
Maybe false. I'm retract my. Did you see what Cocoa did last week? They had apparently
on the road.
Apparently, there was major questionable calls going down there too
against Aquinas. The Zebras let them come back and win in that.
I'll say true. I'm
okay.
Right.
Sponge
week 3, man. We're week 3.
Sponge is buying the hype. So I'm going to lean towards it now. I will say heading into week 4, I'm going to say true. We'll have a team win a state championship. I don't think it's going to come in the Metro Division. I do think we'll have our best case. Our best chance for a state championship in that suburban division, either St. Augustine or Bradford. And I think Metro is still such a different beast. Mandarin is the best shot there. I don't think Trinity or UC. I think with Chaminade being that gatekeeper in 1M, I think it's going to be a tough road to hoe for those Metro teams. And my next one, public school team, Mandarin, who is going to be that best public school in Duval County come playoff time, come furthest run, state championship? Who is going to be that team? Mandarin Reigns, you got another dark horse. Who is going to be that team for you in the Duval County public school?
Got to roll with the Mustangs, man. I just feel like they have everything you need right now, and they're just going to continue to get better. They've had those first early tests against 2 pretty good teams. When you got good quarterback play, when you got great skill guys, when you're balanced like they are on offense, their defense will just continue to come. I think their schedule sets up pretty well for them. So I think they're going to be the best team. Now, you can go 10-0 in the city and lose in the first round of the playoff.
Yep.
And to me, that's a failure. So figure it out and then make a deep run. And then you can be talked about as one of the best teams, around one of the best teams in the last decade, whatever, 5 years, whatever. So I'll go with Mandarin.
Okay, I'm going to say I will say Mandarin, but I'll asterisk this with Reigns as my second. I think Reigns.
I would echo that sentiment.
So I think Mandarin. I mean, you have those monsters in 4M staring at you,
That's the problem too.
You've got the monster. That's why it's so difficult with those Miami-Dade, Broward guys standing in the way. Again, you got Chaminade blocking the Trinity UC train, and you got the monsters in Seminole and those beasts in Miami blocking that Mandarin train. So I think maybe a Reigns could sneak in there. I mean, you're going to be in there with Bolles again, banging with Bolles in the regional finals probably. And I think Reigns could be that dark horse team. That regional finals last year, I think maybe a state semifinal this year for Coach Donovan Maslin and company. So I'll go with those 3 this week. We'll embark on our Tired or Wired segment more next week. So throwing a little bit of curveball. So a team will play for a state championship this year. A team will win a state championship this year. And Duval County Public School team going the furthest. We've got Mandarin with Reigns, a side of Reigns. So that'll do it for a week 3 heading into week 4 edition of the Varsity Podcast. For Sponge Franklin, Justin Barney, we will chat with you next week.